So, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful Thursday. Happy Black History Month. My name is Teresa Young, and I am one of the co leads of Henry Street Settlement's DEI team. That's our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. Also on our team is Chris Colanisi, who is my co lead, along with Nicole Regalado, who works in our Neighborhood Resource Center, Jeannie Tung, who is over at Workforce, Matthew Pfeiffer, who is the VP of Employment and Education Services here at Henry Street, Craig Peterson, who is the Executive Director at the Art Center, and Jan Rose, who is our Chief People Officer. The DEI team is dedicated to working with our Henry Street team members around issues of diversity and inclusion. And we currently have an opening on our team. So if people are interested in this work, then I encourage you to apply and consider joining us. I'd also like to throw out a pitch for our newsletter that our communications team does a fabulous job putting together. We've moved to a monthly edition, and there's a lot of great information in it. So please check it out if you haven't already done so. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to contact us at dei@henrystreet.org. So, back to the reasons why we are here today. We're here celebrating Black History Month, and the theme for 2022 is Black Health and Wellness. So, we are spotlighting the contributions of pioneers in medicine and in health and mental health. And we thought that this was an appropriate vehicle for our Black History Month celebration because we know that Black people have for centuries used the arts as a form of healing. Today, we are going to talk to some thought leaders and fabulous artists who are going to share with us their thoughts around the arts and healing spaces that can be created throughout the community by looking at the vehicle of Amor Thomas's, better known as Questlove, revolutionary documentary, Summer of Soul. But don't worry if you haven't had a chance to view the movie. You won't be lost in this conversation because our panelists will definitely be able to bring you into the conversation through all sorts of medium. But the focus, of course, is going to be on culture, on Black culture, which we all know is American culture. And we will be able to talk it out and be able to really think about what this healing space is going to mean to us. So before we get started, I wanted to invite us to do a little clip of the video for Summer of Soul. And after we do that, we're going to begin introducing our panelists.
Great, thank you. I am going to play the trailer for the film now.
Are you ready, Black people? Are you really ready? Are you ready to listen to all the beautiful Black voices, the beautiful Black feeling, the beautiful Black waves moving in beautiful air? Are you ready, Black people? Are you ready?
Nobody ever heard of the Harlem Culture Festival. Nobody would believe that happened.
6 weekends with major artists.
The Panthers were the security and kids were sitting up on the trees. I was nervous. I didn't expect a crowd like that. Something very important was happening. It wasn't just about the music.
1969 was a change of era in the black community.
The styles were changing.
Music was changing.
And revolution was coming together.
We are a new people. We are a beautiful people.
That concert took my life from black and white into color.
We wanted progress. We are black people and we should be proud of this.
We were coming together to say this was our world and how beautiful it was.
We're gonna try to sing a song together. Don't wait for your neighbor, because your neighbor might be waiting for you. Wanna take you higher? Are you ready? Wanna take you higher?
We believed in what we felt in here. So when we went up, let's go. Let's go do it.
So in the words of the fabulous Nina Simone, I'm asking everyone, are you ready? Is your mind ready? Is your body ready? Are you ready to listen to beautiful Black people, listen to beautiful Black voices, to beautiful Black feelings? Are you ready to do what is necessary? And join us as we bring forth our moderator for this wonderful panel, Makeba Dixon-Hill. So let me tell you a little bit about Makeba, and her accomplishments are great. So I'm going to read her bio for you to just give you a little bit, a little taste of what we are in store for. People-focused and a firm believer in the power of art to realize dreams, Makeba Dixon-Hill's professional service transcends traditional definitions of community support and advocacy. She's an independent consultant and advisor for organizations, art agencies, and creative professionals. She designs and secures funding, providing project support to equitable programming and community engagement strategies, and conducts workforce development research within the arts sector. She's held positions at museums at all sizes throughout the nation, including her most recent position as the curator of education and interim director at Spelman College Museum of the Arts. At Spelman, Makeba's work centered on curating programming and interdisciplinary experience that engaged the Atlanta University Center, its broad Atlanta community, and other stakeholders interested in institutions, world-class exhibits, and special projects. She's also built upon those experiences by engaging the global arts community at the Studio Museum in Harlem, right here in New York City, and the Arts Institute of Chicago, where her interdisciplinary community-centered programming philosophies were cultivated and championed. Makeba has served on several boards and review committees, including the Alliance for Theater, the Bronze Lens Films Festival, the Creative Capital, the Kennedy Center, and the Council on Library and Information Resources. She holds a BA from Spelman College and a master's in Arts Administration and Policy from the School of Arts Institute in Chicago, and with specialized training from America for the Arts and the David C. Driscoll Center, the Getty Institute, the Joyce Foundation, and the United Way. So a big round of applause for Makeba as she brings the rest of the panel to us and leads us in this discussion. Thank you for joining us, Makeba.
You're welcome. And thank you so much, Teresa, for that warm and complete welcome. And Chris, for using the reactions. I absolutely love that. And in the spirit of engagement, I just love the title of how we call this the Hour of Power. So when we kind of have this larger discussion around Black History Month now, we're thinking about so many questions that have been coming up. Do we still need it? Who is it for? What should it be called? And so there's this Sankofa moment that we've been experiencing, going back to know what we're doing forward and knowing the way. And so I just love in this way where we talk about the past, present, and future, we're using some of that evoking language that may be coming from the Pentecostal church of that hour of power. So you all, you're in for such a wonderful treat. I'm so thankful to the Henry Street Settlement for the invitation to serve as a moderator. Want to do a special shout out to Matthew Pfeiffer for the invitation, to Megan and Chris for working behind the scenes with the tech support that you'll be receiving. So although we'll have dedicated time for questions and answers and discussion, feel free to just create space in the virtual world by engaging the chat. So even if it's not a traditional call near the end of our discussion that we'll have, you can always put that in, and that could even start to make the conversation flow in a different way. I am extremely, just heart open and excited to be in dialogue about this really, really important and engaging and beautiful documentary with 3 powerhouses in their own right. I think it was so beautiful and intentional to bring these unique voices together to talk about an all-encompassing festival that really captures the energy of a movement and of a moment. So when we really kind of zero in and think about what was happening in 1969, it was the marriage of pain and possibility. It was the emerging of disenfranchisement and extreme acts of freedom and agency. And so on the anniversary year of the assassination of Martin Luther King, there was a national conversation around, well, what are we going to do to heal a culture, heal a country, heal a movement? And all over the United States, the states, all of them were using music and culture as a vehicle to create that salve. So in 1969, we have this important iteration of the festival. And so as we saw in the trailer, it gets so much deeper, and I hope that some of you all were able to see it, because we're actually going to do a deep dive and then kind of go out into each of our distinguished panelists' backgrounds. So what I want to do is start to lift up their names and give you a little bit about them. So I'm going to take myself off the screen so we can really zero in into the words and give them that space. I want to first start with Endia Beal. Endia Beal is a North Carolina-based artist, curator, and author. Beal's work merges fine arts with social justice to reveal the oftentimes overlooked and unappreciated experiences unique to people of color. Specifically, Beal's first monograph, Performance Review, brings together work over a 10-year period that highlights the realities and challenges of women of color in corporate workplaces. She lectures about these experiences, which also addresses bias in corporate hiring practices. Beal is it has been featured in several online editorials, including the New York Times, NBC, BET, Huffington Post, the National Geographic, and she has appeared in Time Magazine, the Financial Times Weekend Magazine, Vice Magazine, Essence Magazine, Marie Claire, and Newsweek. Her work has been exhibited in several institutions, including the Nasher Museum of Art at Duke University in Durham, North Carolina, the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History in Detroit, Michigan, and Aperture Foundation in New York. Beal's photographs are in private and public collections, such as the Studio Museum in Harlem, the Museum of Contemporary Photography at Columbia College in Chicago, and Portland State University in Portland, Oregon. She is a fellow of the Center of Curatorial Leadership and completed residencies at Harvard Art Museums, the Center for Photography at Woodstock, and McCall Center for Art and Innovation. Endia has received grants from the Magnum Foundation and Open Society Foundation, among others. She holds a dual degree in art history and studio art from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and an MFA from Yale University. She has also completed the Executive Education in Fostering Inclusion and Diversity program from the Yale School of Management. Welcome, Endia. And now we have Jahmorei Snipes. Jahmorei Snipes is an actress, advocate, and artistic activist. Originally from El Barrio, Jahmorei is born and raised in New York, who currently resides in Harlem, New York. With a profound care for her city and the world around her as a core through line, Jahmorei was introduced to artistic activism in her teen years when she joined the youth channel at Manhattan Neighborhood Network Youth Media Center. In January of 2017, she joined Perfect City as a working group member and co-founded the Cat Call Project, originally presented at Abrams Arts Center during the Perfect City You're Next. Since then, the Cat Call Project, otherwise known as TCP, has developed into a creative advocacy project around safety and empowerment for women in public spaces. After receiving a Bachelor's of Fine Art in Acting with a minor in political science in 2018 from Marymount Manhattan College, Jahmorei has continued to pursue her passions as an actor, theater maker, and activist. She currently works as a member of Perfect City and a teaching artist, as well as deepening and enhancing her acting practice. Her work is grounded in her lived experiences and equips performance as a dynamic medium for all of these practices. Thank you for coming. Thank you for saying yes. And finally, Stevie D, the legendary Stevie D. So perhaps no group embodies the spirit of classic 80s hip hop, R&B, and soul more than the iconic and unstoppable Force MDs. Anyone who has attended a Force MD show knows that from the first words of Tender Love, the whole crowd is instantly unified, swaying arm in arm and passionately singing the soundtrack of their lives. The first few bars of timeless classics like Love is a House or countless other hits that transform any arena into a nostalgic soul celebration in seconds. In addition to a surge of new tour dates and widespread industry buzz about the forthcoming feature-length documentary, Force MDs Relived, the group's momentum has also been fueled by a slew of recent celebrity endorsements. These range from President Obama's highly publicized acknowledgement that he kept Force MDs in rotation on Air Force One, to the growing roster of entertainers who cover the group's songs in their shows. That would include Wiz Khalifa, Alicia Keys, Marsha Ambrosia's New Edition, and others. As a result, the group is experiencing a new chapter in a long-awaited history of success. The Force MDs live shows are known to take fans beyond the group's original classics to dazzle them with an uplifting, soulful tour of the best of the Black music experience. With the captivating energy that took the group from the Staten Island Ferry, where they would perform, to the top of the charts, the group rolls out spontaneous, crowd-pleasing renditions of songs from artists such as The Temptations, Four Tops, The Jackson 5, Al Green, and others. And for those of you all who have seen the documentary, those names would be very familiar because some of those members were actually in the documentary performing. As the longest active member of the group, Stevie D is a dynamic thread that connects the group's history to its present and rapidly evolving future. As a powerful vocalist, pioneering freestyle artist, and electrifying dancer, he exemplifies the blend of hip hop and R&B that the group is known for originating. Today, Stevie D, along with the remaining members of Force MDs, continue to carry that legacy as the embodiment of the distinctiveness of this pioneering supergroup. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for saying yes, and I'm really looking forward to being in dialogue with you. So let's get it started. One of the things that I thoroughly enjoyed and appreciated about Amir Questlove's touch with the documentary was a focus on centering the voice of Harlem residents. For those of you all who have spent time in Harlem, you know that this is an epicenter of culture and style. So it was just a beautiful through line of being able to see and hear the residents of Harlem talk about how it was to physically be there through this weeks-long series. So in the spirit of how this documentary was created, I want to actually start with you, Jahmorei, as a Harlem resident. You've had the honor and this really amazing opportunity to be able to see the documentary multiple times. And in dialogue, you've shared how it impacted you when you first saw it. Talk to us about those first reactions to seeing the documentary.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for having me. So my first time seeing it was when it came out over the summer. And living here in Harlem, first of all, it was a huge, huge deal in just how it was promoted and marketed. It was, you saw a huge banner of Summer of Soul on the Magic Johnson Theater. And you're just hearing Harlem, Harlem, Harlem. And we don't always get to see Harlem in movie theaters, not quite like this. So I was already pretty excited about it just off of that. But when I actually got a chance to watch the documentary for the first time, I felt really overcome with emotion because of it. This documentary shows a festival that's much older than what I am. In fact, the festival is older than my own mom. And yeah, I felt so connected to it despite the huge age gap there. And that was really because, well, one, growing up, I grew up going to that same park where that festival took place. I knew it. I mean, I played there. I've seen concerts there, but I've never seen something that big happen in my neighborhood before. And the fact that something like that had ever happened in the past was just like mind-boggling for me. And to see that much celebration of Blackness and brownness happening was just so beautiful for me. And it was also pretty bittersweet because on one hand, it was like this lovely celebration of our culture that took place, but it's not something that we get to see today in Harlem anymore. And that was something that I was kind of longing for. I would love to see that happen today. But I also had no idea that this festival had ever taken place. So it was like, I got a chance to see a side of my community that I had just never, ever seen. And that was beautiful. If you know anything about Harlem, you know Harlem is so ingrained in culture and art and Blackness. It still is, and it always has been. But now it has changed because of gentrification and just the way that our community has just changed over the years. And so, there's a little bit of a loss that we're feeling. But despite that, the people of this community who have lived here are still holding strong to that legacy that has been created over decades and over generations. For me, I'm a third generation Harlemite. And so I feel so connected to my community, both the East and the West. And seeing that documentary was really I felt like a fire was lit under me again to really grasp onto those roots of culture that we have here.
Thank you so much. And you're making me remember the other half of the title of the documentary. The revolution could not be televised. So we're hearing about a pivotal multi-week festival, something that in New York and other places all over the world, we're we're used to seeing multi-day festivals. We're used to seeing that, but then this moment around how important it was, happening around the same time as Woodstock, less than 200 miles away. I think even in the documentary, it's 100. And when we hear about culture en masse, happening, we're only hearing the dialogue around that time in upstate New York. And so it was just super, super dynamic. And then think about the multi-hyphenated artistic producers that are behind the scenes. So that role of the curator slash artist slash organizer. And that brings me to you, Endia, having, the ultimate slashy title, of being an artist, being a curator, and now mother, all of these roles that you're taking on. I would love to hear from you. What were some of your first impressions of seeing the documentary?
So first and foremost, it's just an honor and privilege to be amongst these amazing panelists. Even when I hear my own bio, I'm like, who is she talking about, right? Like, I have no idea who she's talking about. So it's amazing to be amongst all of you today to talk about such a dynamic documentary. I actually watched it. I have two sons, and I'm pregnant now with my third son. And so my 4-year-old Maxim and I, we watched part of the documentary together. And so he's like fascinated. He loves art. And I remember him looking at it. He's like, what kind of hairstyles are those? And I was like, those are afros. And he's like, afros? And he's like, what kind of hairstyle do I have? And I said, baby, you have low waves. And he was like, low waves? He said, I want an afro. I said, okay. So I told my husband, I said, listen, Max wants an afro, so we're gonna have to work on that and make that happen for him. But I think for myself, just watching the documentary brought back so many memories of my parents, the music they listened to. I grew up in North Carolina, so it's a rich history with like Nina Simone being from North Carolina, John Coltrane being from North Carolina, Shirley Caesar. And so it made me think about all of these kind of elements of my own life, growing up and seeing it taking place on this kind of amazing stage with such a dynamic audience. It made me think about, I'm an artist, so like Archibald Motley's paintings with all of this rich color and texture and music. And I just saw all of that come to life in this documentary. And so it was something about being able to experience that and also experience it with my son and watch that. It felt like it was live, like I was there. And so I think it was something special. And I think to Jahmorei's point, like we know about Woodstock, right? We know about some of the things that happened there, but being able to experience it for the first time and not even know about this at all it was bittersweet in many ways, right? Like, where's this been so many years? And to be able to discover it and experience it, for me it was definitely impactful in a lot of ways as a maker. Just really quickly with the curator part, I thought it was amazing how, they didn't have a big budget. So like, listen, we're gonna put the stage near the sun, right? I mean, just certain things are we call that Afro engineering, So we're gonna figure this out and make this happen. And I think for me, the way they were able to just kind of work with the sound, work with the audio on a limited budget, just showed how much dedication was in making that experience for everybody come to life.
Absolutely. And you're making me also remember this one part in the documentary where an attendee was saying, back in the day with the Temptations, everyone wore suits. But the moment that they saw Sly and the Family Stone, now they wanted to, kind of open up that shirt collar a little bit, and put on, have the afro and grow their hair out. And I just love this moment of how culture and even our own bodies can really inspire and influence, and it's just so interesting that even now to hear your son talk about, trying on a new way of presenting. And this brings me to this, I'm going to ask the same question of you, Stevie D, but from a different angle. That you're so familiar with what it feels like to be on stage and to get that rousing energy of having the opportunity to be at a festival from the vantage point of adoring and soon to be adoring fans watching you and just getting that energy. That was something that one of the performers talked about, was the energy from the people. And so I want to know, how did you feel? I love this. Teresa just put out, Black culture is American culture. And then what we're learning, global culture, because then when we're looking at how dynamic Harlem is, it was bringing up, you know, when you're thinking about East Harlem as an example, a lot of us just normally think about that as being possibly Puerto Rican, but then this conversation of the Caribbean being there, as well as Black Americans and Africans, you know, even thinking about 116, Senegal, you know. Go ahead, Stevie, just jump on in. Yeah.
Hey, now, first of all, I gotta just salute my hat to Questlove, just by putting that together, finding something that no one really knew about on the outside. You know, it's just hidden for a lot of years, because the regular Woodstock, the other Woodstock, you know, is always televised, always promoted. And for this not to be promoted in all these years, we just now find out about it. That was like definitely a great move that he did, to just keep the awareness that there was other type of Woodstocks also that really people didn't get to see. It kind of reminds me of MTV in the beginning, when they didn't want to play black videos. Kind of reminds me of that kind of a little bit. But I got a surprise. I was born in Harlem. I was raised in Staten Island. I was born in Harlem. I was actually there. My mother said we was there, but I was 3 years old, because I ain't gonna tell you my age, but I was 3 years old at the time. My mother said I was at the, she said me and my brother was there. I vaguely remember, I know I was 3, but I don't remember that great, but I know one thing, whatever it did, me seeing those musical acts on stage, it definitely engaged me and put something in me to make us, me and my brother, my brother TC was there, because we was both born in 1963. And that definitely put the spirit of music in us even more, just watching it. My mother was like just telling me how engaged we were watching that concert. I was like, wow. So when Questlove like I said, he put it out all these years later, some of it came back to me like, damn, I do remember this. I do remember this, some of this stuff. So the question is, I really wish, like your young lady said, that they would have had more of these concerts. You know, it felt like a big togetherness, like people were so together, and it felt good about each other that day. And that's the feel I get from it. You know, everybody felt so good. And, you know, I always wondered, who promoted this? How did everybody know about this? Is it just Harlem, or people from all over the country came to this? That's what I always wondered on this, because it was just so many people out there, you know, and they had it for the days they had it. It was definitely an event not to forget. I'm so glad that we got the awareness to see this, and so many of the acts, Gladys Knights, David Ruffin, just all the top acts, Sly and the Family Stone were top acts, and just to perform. And I just wish we was older. We could have been on the stage singing. It would have been great. I would have loved it. But if they have another one, I want to be on the stage. We want to be on this. Force got to be on the stage singing. If they ever gave anything like nowadays and give another kind of Woodstock, we would love to be on the stage performing, because you are right. The energetic feeling that you get from the audience, it exudes inside your body. And that's something that is something hopefully happens in the future. And a lot of the artwork I've seen is so genius. Some of the stuff these people painted, and it's like, wow. And yes, about the afros, I gotta say the afros, that's big. People still bringing it back. Afros ain't going nowhere yet. See, people still bringing them afros back, so don't sleep.
Absolutely. And then there's this other moment around, I think that this is indicative about the spirit of New York, you know, and it's definitely the spirit of Harlem, open access. So in this moment, this was an interdisciplinary festival. We had music, comedy, dance, and then also the market that was happening on the outskirts within the or like within the crowd, you know, there were local artists that were bringing their artwork, they were bringing their dance themselves, their music, and also the food. And so there was this moment around really practicing those principles of Kwanzaa, where there was cooperative economics being interwoven into the festival as well. And that's something that, you know, to know Harlem is to know that somebody's going to find a way, you know, to secure a bag. You know, somebody's going to find a way to tell you about the project that they're working on. And it was just really beautiful that something under the umbrella of the state government, you know, the local government, actually had these opportunities that the community was a part of and taking advantage of. So in the best and most healthiest of ways. It was something else that I really appreciated you saying, Stevie, when you uplifted Questlove's name, because it almost brings you into another instance on how he's digging in the crates. You know, that practice of how the DJ, of how the musician, of how the music enthusiast, when they're really, you know, into a particular genre, they go into deep research and deep study. And I think that this is operating as like another text. And with that, that brings up something that we are always in dialogue in the arts, and now even in libraries and cultural institutions, that are the archive. And in this particular offering, it starts to problematize that and make it a little bit more critical of the discussion, because this archive was hidden. This archive was below the surface and not, you know, a well-known story. And one of those things that one attendee talked about near the end, and this is on the thread of really being emotionally moved by the evidence and seeing the evidence. And also a young boy at the time, he communicated that, I know I'm not crazy. And he began to tear up at the end. And he said, I was so young, but now seeing it, it explains so much to me. And so there's a moment that we as Black American women, you know, have this conversation on why we feel the way that we do in the workplace at times. And that is, did you not see that microaggression? Did you not see this, you know, play of undermining authority? And it brings me to a particular clip that Charlene Hunter Galt talks about in the documentary. And just to kind of take this conversation a little further south, to where Endia and I are based, Charlene Hunter Galt, along with Hamilton Holmes, integrated the University of Georgia. And so while there, she really talks about what it felt like, you know, this conversation along the lineage of people like Ruby Bridges and maybe even some of our own parents or grandparents, that moment of integrating spaces. She talks about being one of those early voices in the media that transitioned the language from Negro to Black, and how that happened within the corporate space while working at the New York Times. Can you all play the audio of Charlene Hunter Galt speaking that? And then Endia, I would love for you to respond after hearing it.
It was a significant change, calling yourself Black. In the early 60s, if you called someone Black, it meant you wanted to fight them, because no one wanted to hear that mess.
Why do we think of Black as bad and white as good? White symbolizes purity, honesty, innocence. Black represents evil, wickedness, and gloom. Whites gave Black its negative meaning.
In 1969, I was working at the New York Times, and I spent a lot of time in Harlem. And for the first time, I wrote Black instead of Negro in a story, because I listened to the community. I listened to the people who were calling for the change, but some white editor changed my wording from Black back to Negro. I was so upset. I dictated an 11-page memo calling for the change, and the editor, Abe Rosenthal, said, fine, that's what we're gonna do. From that point on, at the New York Times, people of color, this color, were referred to as Black.
We were Black and we were proud. When we started singing freedom songs, message songs, the Black Panthers, Fred Hampton, Stokely, and his boys would come here.
Do you want me to keep playing it? Is that?
Megan is perfect. In case anybody wants to know what the Black Panther said. So if anybody said, you could just jump on, but it's just kind of rounding it all out to talk about community and showing up for each other regardless. But no one has said that they want to hear the rest in the chat. So Endia, please respond. And I would love for you to talk about the work that you've done with your own art as a result.
No, definitely. And when I saw that clip, I realized that her experiences are not unique, right? This is something that women and people of color were fighting for across the United States. We're still fighting for that now, right? To be identified in the ways in which you want to be identified. Like Makeba said, we're both from the South. I mean, I remember growing up and going into high school, and we had two homecoming queens, Miss Black and Miss Gold, and Miss Black was white and Miss Gold was Black, which is interesting. And they ended that in 2008. Right? So these are issues that are happening continuously in communities. My work specifically focuses on those kind of microaggressions that Makeba was talking about in terms of the experiences of women of color within the corporate space and trying to fit into a space that was never designed for women of color to thrive in the first place. You know, I remember when my article came out in the New York Times, and Whitney Richardson, who is what was one of the photo editors, we said, we're going to capitalize B in Black. Right? But that's something that we don't do. It's not grammatically correct, but we wanted to emphasize the importance of what we're talking about in terms of experiences of women of color. And so the New York Times said, okay, we're gonna capitalize B, but then there are other editorials like the Huffington Post and other editorials that didn't necessarily do that, but were open to the conversation around capitalizing that word. You know, I think that even in my own work, many of the women in my photographs, and maybe we can show a few, went to HBCUs, right? And so my students, which is historically Black colleges and universities, for those who don't know, my students are going through the same microaggressions, the same experiences of being the first, having to alter themselves to assimilate into these spaces, changing their hairstyle, their clothing, their name, ask questions about whether they have kids or not, things like that are still happening in 2019, 2020, 2022. And so hearing that clip, and even thinking about the Black Panther Party, which was all about employment and uplifting Black employment, which is one of their staples in terms of what they were standing for, you know, and thinking about how that is instrumental even now and thinking about employment and equity. So the work that I made really focuses on, Am I What You're Looking For? That particular series focused on young women showing up how they want to be seen, right? Unapologetically. And saying, this is how I want to be seen. This is how I want to be addressed. And I'm not assimilating anymore. And I think that, that's one of the discussions. What we're looking at now is, can I touch it? Where again, thinking about conformity within those spaces and giving white women traditionally Black hairstyles to kind of address the kind of nuances, the ridiculousness of having to alter yourself to fit into those spaces. And I think in the documentary, she's talking about that, of not altering herself, not waning from the fight, but really saying, this is how I show up. And for me, choosing white women in terms of creating a kind of a new other, right? So what if Ellen came in with this look? How would you treat her? And this is a style that women of color wear all the time. If we go to the next one, these are the series from Am I what you're looking for? Again, having women of color, primarily women who attended HBCUs, showing up in the ways they wanted to be presented and the ways they want to be addressed within the corporate space. In many ways, preparing for the performance, preparing for those adversities that take place when you go into those spaces and have to try to fit in, comfortable being uncomfortable in those spaces. And so I think you're right. In that particular clip, from the Black Panther Party to her own experiences going to the university, really shaped that discussion.
Thank you, Endia. And I really love your use of having the backdrop be seen. So when you really kind of have that visual dialogue with like the performance within the performance, because it's a minefield at time, and you're kind of sometimes when you're getting so caught up in it, you may not even recognize that you're a part of a greater designed program that's also a facade and not real. So when we kind of unpack conversations about what is professional or professionalism, that really starts to have a slippery slope as well.
Definitely.
And so, it's 9:49, not 9:49, 1:49. We want to open it up for conversation with people. So if anyone in the chat has any questions, feel free to drop it in the chat and we can address it. And then we can also continue, because Jahmorei, a question that I have for you is also kind of coming up, especially in dialogue with Endia's conversation about her work. And I think when we start to talk about occupying space, there's also the conversation around absence as presence and erasure. In the film, in the documentary, there was the moment of the aftermath of the festival, and we just started to see the remnants of maybe the cups, the papers, the footprints that were left, that bear witness, the site bearing witness to the space, but no people. And so really thinking about, as you have done in your work, as you unpacking gentrification, and even in some of our pre-conversations talking about Harlem as being ground zero, on a dialogue around gentrification, how did it feel seeing all those Black bodies, Black and brown bodies en masse in the space, and then now seeing, H&M, MAC, Starbucks and sidewalk cafes from Germany, on 125th Street?
Yeah, someone actually mentioned this in the chat. They brought up Harlem Week. And this is also something that my mother brought up, because it's the closest thing that we even have to what might have been the cultural festival of 1969. And that happens every year, where, we sometimes have summer concert series. We celebrate some of the Black-owned businesses or Harlem rooted businesses that are here, but it's still not nearly on as big anymore, I would say. And that's because the neighborhood has changed. One of the things that I noticed growing up was that Harlem has always been about community. You could walk down the block and know pretty much everyone who is living next door to you or within your community. I remember I would be able to just walk 10 blocks to go to school and feel completely safe and comfortable, because I knew if something happened, I can go to the store that my mom knows the owner of, or my grandfather knows the owner of, and be okay. And then when gentrification starts to take place and those businesses start to get pushed out, particularly the small businesses, and people living within the community start to get displaced because of high rent costs, what have you, going on, the neighborhood starts to change. One of the most famous blocks in Harlem is Shriver's Row, and that's because that historically was where wealthy Black people lived. And it's a big deal because you weren't seeing a lot of wealthy Black people, particularly in Harlem, which has a mixed demographic of wealth within the Black and Brown community, but Shriver's Road was wealth. And now when you walk through Shriver's Road, the people living in those buildings aren't all us. A lot of it is white people or non-Black people living in those buildings, not really knowing the historical significance of those buildings, or the historical significance of this community and where art and culture lie. So for me, seeing that clip at the end with the festival being over, it was a bit heartbreaking, because that was kind of like the period at the end of it, when really that's something that should have been continuing on, because this is a community that is just enveloped in arts, enveloped in culture. And that is something that's where we were able, we can't, in Harlem, we don't separate arts and politics and social change. It's intertwined and it's necessary. At one point, I would say like Harlem was Black Hollywood. And I think people today might argue that that might be Atlanta now, just because of the change. And I did say on our pre-conversation that Harlem was the ground zero for New York of gentrification and change, because now you're seeing it in other communities of color throughout the city, particularly like in LES where Henry Street is. You're seeing that change happening with high-rise buildings coming in, new, you got Trader Joe's, you have Target, all the Starbucks. I know for here in Harlem, when that Whole Foods went up on 125th Street, that was a big deal, because there was a Pathmark that was there and that's gone. And now that's a vacant lot. But they brought in Whole Foods, which doesn't really have a real connection with our community. And then you're seeing other chain stores that don't really have strong connections with us. And it's changing and people feel it. They can feel it and they see it. And so, however, I would say like people aren't giving up. People are fighting back against that. There are plenty of Black owned small businesses, new ones, old ones, that are still here, still thriving, still fighting to hold on to that significance in that culture. And that's so important. And I think that's so necessary for not only other neighborhoods in New York to see that, but universally, Black and Brown communities across the states and really globally need to see that, because, this is the first example of that, but you're feeling it all over. Universally, Black people are feeling that. You're feeling a pushback and an erasure of our culture, which is interesting considering we are the blueprint for what becomes popular, what becomes important. You're seeing that. You're seeing a younger generation on, for example, TikTok, seeing a lot of the stuff that they're creating being taken and the credit being removed from them. They're feeling that. And that's not by accident. That's something that's really ingrained in American culture.
Thank you so much for that, because there's this conversation around what is by design. And then I just really want to amplify some comments that are coming in the chat from Jay Koo about economics and how that's showing up. So there are a couple of links that are here that are really great, that it's talking about how the people.
Oh, hi, Jay.
Yep, the people these power dynamic models and turning it on its head. So you all take a look at the chat and take a look at the links that are there. I see another question, but I want to ask Stevie J one really quickly. And this one, well, ask one, and I'll just leave that as a period. And that is kind of almost a full circle moment when Teresa brought up Nina Simone. I want to return to a quote from her that was also in the documentary that was talking about it's being the artist's duty to reflect the times. So in this pioneering role that you had with Force MDs, really thinking about as rappers, as MCs, and then also kind of evoking R&B sound, and then that shift into crooning, singing in that way. How are you feeling about the music of today, and what are some of the things that you're actually excited about, and really feeling like, the legacy is continuing within the spirit of how you all began in the 80s? You're on mute.
There I go. All right. Yeah, it's definitely a big switch in the music today, but it's still the music today that's still taken from the music from the past, and they're flipping it to what they do. And the younger some of the younger generation don't know that, hey, that came from that. They get stuff from what they got from the past, but flips it in today, and like a younger person wouldn't know where that all came from. But it's some of the language, a little thing bothers me sometimes. The down rating women. That's still, I'm older, so that still like bothers me sometimes, because I see younger kids like 8, 9 mimicking words that I don't feel comfortable with. Like some, I'm not saying all, just some artists say, hey, take the 9 and shoot you and this and that, and get your girl, and and you hear these kids so enthused by these artists and just mimicking and thinking that's where it's supposed to be. Like that's the world today. That's and that's the same thing that bothers me. But from us, coming from rapping, and actually a lot of rapping started in Staten Island, but Harlem is the main place where we got our break when it came to rappers, as the Force MCs. And that place was called Harlem World. A place called Harlem World is where we really got noticed as the only act from Staten Island to have people like, wow, you guys are from Staten Island? I didn't, we such a forgotten borough at the time. Staten Island was such a forgotten borough, but Harlem definitely embraced us, and we learned a lot. That's where I met Dougie Fresh and everybody. We're close friends to this day, real tight friends to this day. But I embraced a lot out of Harlem, but people don't realize that rapping in Harlem, and plus in Staten Island with my other brothers, we sung. So I was always a singer, but got into the rapping, and then people in Harlem just thought like we were just singers, but we put the rap into it, and we became one of the architects of the whole R&B hip hop sound, which you hear, Mary J. Blige, Jodeci, all these guys are doing now. We were one of the architects of that sound, because we definitely brought the hip hop into the R&B. And right now that sound dominates, because you got Drake, they singing with their rapping now. Everybody's singing and rapping at the same time, doing that style just became so huge, and just really contribute to this rap, the rap as a genre of music being multi-billion-dollar industry now, just because of rap is like the #1 genre of music right now. And a lot of that came from Harlem and the Bronx, like the Bronx to Harlem. And I was just a part of that. I'm just happy that, it's still going on. And, it's always good to hear a lot of people always say, hey man, what happened to the real R&B? I get that, you hear that a lot. Man, they got to bring real R&B back, but I can't be biased on it, because you do got some still great R&B artists, Maxwell, Music Soul Child. You still got some good artists out there that's still there, but I guess it's getting flooded with the rap and the R&B. But it's all music. It's all music. And my thing on the music thing is, if it makes you feel good, if it hits you in the soul, you did something. Whatever you did in that studio, you affected somebody's lives. Happy, good, bad. You affected somebody's life with music. Music is so, it goes into your soul. And when you're a song, like I'm blessed that we made songs that still transcend to this day. This like 30, 40 years later, still here on the radio, and people, love like our music, and that means a lot, because when you enter that studio and put those headphones on and sing from your heart, or even rappers on there, and we sing from your heart, everybody's gonna feel it. They're gonna feel what you felt. And that's a blessing that God gave to so many singers that they can still feel the Marvin Gaye, Michael Jackson to this day, no matter how young you are. If that feeling hits your heart, you did something. And I just got to say that music today, it really got these young guys really rich. I know that, because back in the day, we wasn't flashing big bricks of money on, yeah, we making money, It wasn't like that back then, but I'm just happy that the music started from somewhere, in the streets, I'd like to say the streets of Harlem and the Bronx. That was the two combinations of where it started, because the Bronx is the next stop to Manhattan, to Harlem. And a lot of those artists, the Cold Crushers, I'm just naming guys, that DJ Hollywood, Busy Bee, Starsky, all these guys put the seed into what's going on now. And I'm just happy to be a part of that seed that still got this R&B music still rocking today.
Thank you so much for that share. And I love how you're also bringing it back like to the energy, the soul, the vibration of the music and what it's able to do and how it's able to impact others. I think all of us have kind of echoed and illustrated in so many different ways what the documentary is also promoting in terms of what those series of Sunday sessions actually did, not only for a community, but also for those artists that were there. I mean, you're hearing people that are coming in with a specific mission to heal, and also a specific mission for healing. It was this beautiful moment around a group of artists talking about the label of not being Black enough, and then showing up to perform the fifth dimension when they were there thinking about the backlash that they would receive as a group that didn't sound Black, to show up and get that healing energy, that acceptance from their own community, and then how that impacted them. And then here we have Stevie Wonder, and then at that moment, little Stevie Wonder working towards his activism and standing strong in his identity as a Black man, and just using the stage as a place to come out, a place to evolve and to grow. And it was just such a beautiful moment in ways that communities and artists work together in this very symbiotic healing space of where you receive and you get at the same time. I think we addressed in many instances the questions that were brought up in the chat. And I just want to kind of open the space to the panelists. If there were some final words that you wanted to offer before we turn it over, please, the stage on Zoom is yours.
Can I say one more thing? I want to say one thing. I'm going back to the part about the being Black. They say, the Negro, it's like, we took a lot of stands on that. First we were, excuse the language, first it was called nigger, then Negro. Negro's supposed to be more lighter than Nick. Like, it's like, it's still, we just being Black. Hey, I'm Black. If you're a white person, I'm a Black person. Like, it was always tagged the name of colored, Negro, nigger. Instead of us just being a Black person on this earth, it was always a problem. But I'm happy that we definitely have more to say so, because we was like forced. They just didn't want to accept us as just a Black human being in America who helped build the country. I always look at that. And now we got, I love when people say, hey, peace, King. I like when a person says, hey, peace, King. Hey, what's up, Black man? How you doing? That's the love, man. And I know we call each other right now, it's rap. Hey, what's up, my nigga? What's up? That's still kind of clinging on to the other word. But they're trying to make it more joyful and acceptable, but it still kind of lingers on to the past. But I like how we're starting to call each other king nowadays. Peace, king. Peace, king. I'm just loving that and hoping that continues. We all kings. We are kings, and I just gotta accept that we are kings. We're special people, and that's how I look at it. I just wanted to get that out there.
I wanted to add too, one of the things I loved about, a lot of times when you go to music festivals, sometimes it's like one type of music, right? And that's what you're listening to the entirety of the festival. And I think there's something so beautiful about the variety of music that was played over these weeks, from gospel to, I mean, my husband's Haitian, so thinking about this kind of, Caribbean aspect that was added to the festival. And I just think it was just such a melting pot in terms of people of color and experiences. I grew up listening to Sam Cooke and the Soul Stirrers, right? With my granddaddy, So thinking about even this kind of like history and kind of in terms of gospel and blues, and North Carolina blues is huge, right? And bluegrass. And so I think for me, the thing that was surprising about the festival, it wasn't just Motown, right? It was a little bit of everything. And I think everybody was vibing to it. It didn't matter who came on the stage. Everybody was just welcoming the sound. And I think for me, that's one of the biggest takeaways in watching it, is not only just the kind of breadth and depth of the music, but just showing so many aspects and how the audience was loving whoever came out there and what they were doing and what they were bringing. And that to me was exciting the whole time. Yeah.
Yeah, I love both of your points. I wanted to go back to something that Stevie D said earlier about hip hop. And I just love that you talked like that, because my father's a DJ, so he's in that same generation. So I kind of grew up listening to like all that music, but also seeing how hip hop has become so mainstream. And in many ways, we celebrate that, but it's also kind of scary because that's when gatekeeping kind of falls to the way. And there are so many genres that were created by Black people culturally that kind of got, in many ways got colonized. And I know growing up for me, like it was very, very strange to be a fan of like alternative music or like punk or rock, not knowing that, that was something that was rooted and grounded in what we created. And so I also love the part, I'm glad that you brought up Fifth Dimension's part there, because I loved what they said about that, because wanting to be accepted because, they felt like maybe their music wasn't Black enough. And then coming to the future here today, where we have something like Afropunk, which was created to give a space originally for Black people who were more into the alternative scene when it came to music. And now that's really expanded into a more Afrocentric, very Black-centered music festival. And just seeing how that has changed. And the evolution of hip hop just really, that always fascinates me, because we are trying our hardest to really like hold on to that and keep it within our culture, which we very much should, because it's something that was created out of necessity, and it wasn't just purely based out of fun, but there was a real need for hip hop when it was birthed in Harlem and in the Bronx. I mean, there was just so much going on politically and socially, and it still is very much needed today for us culturally, because there's just so much happening. And for me, when I went to Afropunk, I was in college, and I graduated from high school 2 years after what happened with Trayvon Martin. And then that was like my first experience of that on such a grand scale. And just to see that continuously happen after that, going to Afropunk was just very empowering, because I got to be around Black people who look like me, and we got to listen to music and see artists talk about stuff that was relevant to us. It was a huge deal when Solange finally headlined at Afropunk. I mean, And I was fortunate enough to see her twice that same summer. I saw her at Panorama and then I saw her at Afropunk. Panorama is not a Black space, that was a white space. It was drastically different to see her there and then see her at Afropunk, where she might sing "Don't Touch My Hair," and it's a crowd of Black people understanding the significance of what that really means about not touching my hair. What's the importance of that? And then to hear her sing something fun like the Proud Family theme song, which was also important because there's a history of racism that goes into cartoons and animation across the scale when it comes to Black people. But to have a show like the Proud Family come out when I was growing up and to see like us be in this beautiful light, in this animated light, and then have the theme song be sung by Solange and Destiny's Child. So then to go Afropunk and hear her sing that and the whole crowd sing the theme song, it was more important than just nostalgia. This was about us. This is about our culture and about what that meant. And I think we have the Harlem a cultural festival to thank for other festivals coming out today and really trying to emulate that same energy, and also the music of the past still transcending into the future. You know, I love it.
Perfect final words. Thank you so much, you all. We have someone who wants to share a work of art with us. Todrick, I am going to invite you to come off chat and share this poem that you wrote. I think it would be a beautiful close. So let me just thank all of the panelists for showing up, being such engaging, generous, and courageous speakers and sharers. Thank you so much, Henry Settlement, for creating this space to be the second installment of your amazing series, to really have that hour of power. And Todrick, take us on home. And then after that, I'll turn it over to Henry Street to take it from there.
Thank you, Makeba. Hello, everyone. My name is Todrick. I want to share a poem with you all that I wrote called I Am Black History. I wrote this poem maybe 15, 20 years ago while I was incarcerated. The poem takes place in a class. I happened to graduate while I was in Sing with a bachelor's degree in behavioral science. So the poem takes place in one of my English classes. It's also a documentary that the poem comes from called University of Sing Sing. If anyone is interested in singing, it's about higher learning in college. Yeah, here we go. Poem I wrote maybe 10, 12 years ago. It's called I Am Black History. It goes like this. I planted seeds that gave birth to civilizations. I'm the beginning and end. I've sat on thrones, recorded my history through hieroglyphics, scratched on stones. I fathered medicines, science, philosophy, and astrology. Built pyramids with hand tools, established the first universities and schools. For millennia I've ruled, even taught my conquerors. Architected more than my share of the world's wonders. I've been brutally slain, even shackled and chained. I've dove into my liquid grave, off the deck of ships for slaves. Millions of my bones line the ocean's floor in rebellion. My blood has fertilized the soils of the Americas. I've been lashed, castrated, and burned to ash. Hung from tight ropes, died for the right to vote. I've cried freedom at rallies. I've had a dream, screamed black power, bullet or the ballot. I've been desegregated and more separated from my enemy. I fought wars to protect the system that's systematically killing me. I've lost my mind, killed and died at the hands of my own kind. I've shot dope and been a crack fiend, abused and disrespected my black queen. I've been down and up the mountaintop, been falsely accused, been guilty, incarcerated and locked down a lot. I've worked my way from the fields to the boardrooms. I've loved and nurtured the growth of my black woman and child. Vision me, the black man, and of my history I am proud. I am Black history.
Wow.
This is a poem I wrote
Thank y'all.
Yo, that was it.
Thank
Good.
you.
Really good, man.
Thank you, brother. That means a lot coming from you.
Man, I see Chi Ali up in there.
Yeah, Chi Ali. That's a good brother of mine, man. He's out here too now, so you know he's been impactful in my life as well. He set me up with some good things, brother.
Hey, man, I really like that, B. Definitely.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Thank everyone.
So as we come to a close for our Power Hour, we would just like to thank all of our panelists again, our moderator, Makeba, our panelists, Jahmorei, Stevie D, and Endia. Thank you so much for coming and sharing with us. And Todrick, thank you so much for sharing that wonderful piece of work with us. Before we end, we have a raffle that we would like to do for all of our attendees. Everyone who either registered or who attended has been entered into a raffle for tickets to a Black-owned business that is a sip and pour company and located here on the Lower East Side. So we will be announcing the winners in a minute, and you will be receiving an email from one of our DEI team members, Nicole Regalado, on how to claim your tickets. So there'll be 2 prizes for 2 tickets for each of our winners. Chris, have you been able to do the raffle yet? You want to handle the announcement?
I got the box. I'm shaking it up here. So we're gonna pick 2 people. Okay. We have Barbara Cancelbaum. Congratulations, Barbara. From Henry Street. And shake it up again. And our other winner is Aaron Landsman from Perfect City. So thank you both. And Nicole will reach out to you shortly. Congratulations.
Thank you so much for everyone attending. And please look out for our other programs from the DEI committee and check out our newsletter. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.